this, and I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so why the hell won't this work? Okay. Here we go. So everybody, thank you for coming along today. And for those of you who don't know me, I know it's hard not to, because I'm such a big mouth. I can't keep my mouth shut and talk about like all this stuff all the time. But my name is Sarah Grillo, and I'm sincerely appreciative that all of you have put your faith in me enough to sacrifice a little bit of your time to be here. I'm super psyched up to make this as rewarding as possible as I can, but humbly wanted to thank you. I also wanted to just mention, and I'm going to put this in the chat, that we do have these meetups every month. It seems like, here, I'm going to just put it right there. Please sign up right now for the December 14th one. We are having these once a month on the second Wednesday at 1 p.m. The second Wednesday of the month at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So I have a list of all the dates that I'm going to email out, but the next one is December 14th. So it would be great if you could just go ahead and join, and the link is in the chat right now. This meeting is being recorded. So, and the other thing is, this is an inclusive environment. You know, I've said this before, I believe in inclusion, and that is inclusion of people of whatever category, if we even need to categorize people. But I don't want anyone to feel marginalized or uncomfortable for any reason. So if, as you're the person organizing this, if I've neglected to make any accommodations, you know, I really want to know about that. So that I want to include people who are blind, deaf, requiring a translator, sometimes different developmental disabilities such as autism can prohibit like flash photography or whatever usage. So I really just want you to feel comfortable coming to me if you require any accommodations. And on that note, here is a way that can you all see this? The screen with the arrow. Okay, so there's a way to actually enable Zoom captioning. It's at the bottom of your screen. It should be live transcript, if you can see that button. This is really useful, because if anyone is hearing impaired, then you can actually see the words coming up instead of having to listen to them. So thank you all. So I also want to mention a few things that in the webinar last time, in the meetup last time, I mentioned the idea of social media and the algorithm on LinkedIn. So just for those of you who weren't here, just want to refresh. I'm going to be really brief with this. Basically, you want as many people to comment within the first hour that your post is live on LinkedIn, because the way that the algorithm works, and I don't program the algorithm, but this is what I've seen to be true over the many years that I've been doing this, is that after 1 hour, LinkedIn looks at the amount of engagements, comments, likes, shares, and then LinkedIn is going to either push up your posting to more than the initial 10% that it sent it to, or it's going to just push it down and not send it to any more people. So what a lot of people don't realize is that if you have 10,000 followers, it's not 10,000 people that see the post initially. It's only 10% of that, 7 to 10% of that. So what I'm trying to organize here is what we have these engagement communities. Some of you have been a part of this before with me, but we could actually organize it so that we get together as a group at a certain time and that we all comment on each other's posts within that 1 hour. It's called the golden hour. Some people refer to these as pods, as social media pods. And of course, the goal is to trigger the algorithm, but on a larger level, when a lot of people are commenting and commenting thoughtfully, it does actually achieve the goal, and this is LinkedIn's goal as well, is to generate meaningful conversations that spur activity on the platform. And hence, that's the kind of thing that gets rewarded with more views on LinkedIn. So, I mean, I do see a lot of you posting, and I was thinking that since we all kind of, for the most part, believe in these concepts in common, that maybe we could get together and all kind of comment on each other's postings. So I'll be organizing that. I just want to hear from you. Is this a feature that you'd like me to add to our community? If so, let me know. You all know how to reach me. I can't keep my mouth shut and I'm everywhere. So just let me know if you'd like to be a part of that, if you think it's a good idea, bad idea, whatever. The other thing is I have an advice-only slip sheet. It's a one-page tear sheet that describes what is an advice-only planner, et cetera. And I have one for flat fee. And you could use these for marketing purposes, just to explain to people that you meet how your firm is different, or, you know, what a flat fee advisor really is. And these are just free. I'm going to actually go ahead and put the link in the chat box in a minute. And also I wrote a shell for a flat fee advisor website. I posted that to our LinkedIn group. I'll also be sending it out over email, but I just found that a lot of people, to be honest with you, like in looking at some of your websites, not trying to be like mean or anything, but I do think that you could benefit from a little bit more organization from a business perspective of, well, what do you say in the fee section? What should you say in your bio? What should the homepage say? So I just went ahead and wrote a template for website copy for flat fee advisors. And I'm also going to put that in the chat once I stop blabbing. There are other resources for free on YouTube. I have a whole playlist where I visually will demonstrate examples of a great website for a flat fee advisor, LinkedIn page, biography for a flat fee advisor. All of these things are available in video format as well. And of course, we have our LinkedIn group. I'd love for there to be more discussions there. You know, I don't see myself as some kind of a spokesperson or leader. I've said this before, that you all are the leaders, not me. I'm just here to facilitate this. So that's my goal with the LinkedIn group, is to get y'all together and get y'all communicating. So if you have a question, please don't feel shy about posting it there. If you just want to say hi and meet people, I really do believe that we could do this. I feel so strongly about doing this. And but I do think it's going to be a lot better if we could help each other to the maximum extent possible. So I'm going to put all those links in the chat. But first, just wanted to share some things that I'm proud of that I see people in our group accomplishing. Danielle Miura is an advice-only planner. She was recently featured in Market Watch. Danielle, are you here, girlfriend? Good for you. Woohoo! I'm always proud to, see people from our movement, getting visibility, and also especially when it's a female, and nothing, doesn't, it's not to say that I'm not proud of men as well. But I know that there are fewer women than men in the profession. And in the future, I really would love to see more women, because I would love to see more women represented in this role. So good for you, Danielle. Andy Panko, who is a very prominent flat fee advisor, was on the Michael Kitces podcast. Cody Garrett, an advice-only planner. I don't know if any of these people are here today, but still, I just want to show positive examples about things that we are achieving as a community. Is that Cody actually started up a CFP scholarship, always generous and giving, and that I believe is one of the values I would like to see financial advisors demonstrate more in the future, collectively. So it's very nice to see this example. And also, Bob Virus recently wrote about us, not just about flat fee or advice-only advisors in general, but he wrote about us in our group. And Bob has been to our meetups before, so it's so nice to be acknowledged. And if anything, I just want to make the point that although it may at times feel like the work is unending, or that there are challenges and this and that, I mean, you could see here that what people are doing. So just kind of please keep your heads up and always come to our group for inspiration, because I'm trying to show you, and I think there are many, many more than these people. So having said that, Brian, are you here?
I am here.
Okay, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, so appreciate it. As noted on the screen, Sarah invited me to share a quick update on the SEC marketing rule. Many of you may have seen in the headlines that the compliance deadline for the new rule was on Friday. And so just to briefly, over a couple of minutes, share a little bit about what that means, what it means to you, and what we think it means for the industry. Within the rule, there were a couple of key components. One was, after 60 years, the SEC finally allowing advisors to use testimonials and online reviews in their marketing efforts, really keeping in mind that the catalyst for that was for the benefit of consumers that have come to rely upon reviews when they're looking to hire professionals or do just about anything we do. And so that's going to be, I think, a really great benefit going forward for consumers, but also for advisors. And then the other element of the rule was really focused around performance advertising. And that was actually the stickier part of the rule in terms of compliance officers and their hesitation to comply with the rule sooner than the deadline date, as they hoped for additional guidance and a little bit more color in terms of how to incorporate that into their policies and procedures. I'm not going to touch on that in the remarks because I don't know that that's as relevant to a lot of the people here. But specifically, the testimonials and online reviews, I think it's going to be a real game changer for advisor marketing going forward. So just to touch on that a little bit more and what that means for you, whether you're SEC registered or state registered. First and foremost, just because the SEC now permits reviews, you don't have to get started or utilize reviews in your marketing, but you have that optionality to do so. So if you're working for a larger SEC registered firms, hopefully you've received guidance indicating how you can get started and the steps that you need to take to comply. Many firms may not yet have provided guidance, so keep an eye out for that, or you can definitely reach out to your compliance officer to ask the question. But taking a step back and just looking at it, the benefits of reviews, we can look to other trust-based professions, whether it's doctors, lawyers, where reviews have been around for pretty much as long as the internet has started to really allow for online reviews. And what we see in those trust-based professions is statistics showing over 80% of consumers, when they're looking to hire a lawyer or looking to find a doctor, that they're looking at online reviews. And then diving a little bit deeper, the reason for that, and I think many of us can relate to this based on our own experiences, is when you're looking about, learning about a doctor or an attorney or an advisor for that matter, you can go to their website and you can learn about their experience, their education, credentials. But in the case of attorneys and doctors, you also have those ability to, build an emotional connection by reading the reviews, starting to have a feeling as to what that experience is going to be like when you're working with that attorney or as a patient of that doctor. And so now that's going to be a terrific opportunity for advisors and their marketing efforts to create an emotional connection beyond just conveying the facts and the credentials and the experience that you deliver on your website. So I think that's going to be really interesting. A couple other stats that I think are interesting as well, as it pertains to doctors, 75% of consumers said they want to see 7 reviews before trusting a doctor. I think the important thing there is you don't need a ton of reviews for consumers to feel that sense of trust. So getting started, even if you have just a handful of reviews, is really going to start to build that connection emotionally with prospects. And if you're worried about only getting 5-star reviews, the survey indicated 60% of people said they felt a little suspicious if doctors only had 5-star reviews. And so if there's that person that just feels like, well, I'm only going to give a 5-star review to, my grandson, maybe you don't get that 5-star review from every client, but nonetheless, obviously important to have those positive reviews. And then interesting in the case of lawyers, within, doctors, lawyers, there are industry-specific review platforms that have really become the prominent way that consumers are finding professionals in other industries. And so statistics were showing that the number one way people find a lawyer is by looking on online review platforms. So short story here is it's going to become definitely much more prominent way that consumers are starting to find advisors. And the opportunities that we can talk about are how you can incorporate those onto your own website, as well as leveraging third-party platforms as well, because I think 3 to 5 years from now, we could see similar numbers when it comes to the ways that consumers are looking for advisors and relying upon those reviews, similar to other trust-based professions like doctors and lawyers. If you're a state registered advisor, of course, the question is, well, just because the SEC put this forward, how can I get started? And unfortunately, it really is a patchwork across the various states. I can say definitively through conversations or just what I've been able to see in print, if you're in Arkansas, Colorado, Georgia, North Carolina, you're good to go. You've got the green light. For clients, advisors that we're working with, I want to make sure before they get started with testimonials that we've heard, that I've specifically heard verbatim, that it's okay, because many states, even though they've said they're interested in syncing up to the new rule, they're not there yet. They may have a legislative hoop to jump through. Fortunately, many of them will be syncing up, so you should have the opportunity to proceed with testimonials if you're in many states in the not too distant future. But then there are states like Washington State or California that don't seem to have any real interest. And so myself, organizations like XY Planning Network are continuing with an advocacy effort to really try and recast this for those state regulators and build up mainstream media support to say, look, the SEC didn't come out with this new rule for the benefit of advisor marketing. They did it for the benefit of consumers. And we really want to see states start to provide not only an even playing field for advisors, but ensuring that consumers don't have an awkward experience where they can find reviews in this for advisors in the state of California, for example, but only for those that are SEC registered. So more to come on that front. There are organizations of state administrators referred to as Nassau that's working on a model rule that many states might choose to follow. So that could be something else that helps accelerate the timetable, but we'll just have to see. And if you're interested, feel free to shoot me an email, brian@wealthcenter.com. If you're in a particular state and you're interested in their stance, I'm very happy, especially if you have a contact name for somebody at that regulator's office, to reach out, ask the tough questions without you having to put your name kind of out there in the public light, and see what kind of responses we can get, and then just keep them on our list to be a bit of a thorn in their side on your behalf and on behalf of other state registered advisors in that state. And then for SEC registered advisors or states, advisors who are in what I'll call a green state, so states that have given the green light, the first thing you're going to want to do is update your policies and procedures. That's really the prerequisite. And we have kind of a Mad Lib style template where you can fill in the blanks if you're looking for how to update your policies and procedures. It's not complicated. The SEC deserves a lot of credit for actually, even though it's a 400-page rule, making this pretty straightforward for advisors to get started. So putting that policies and procedures in place, that's really just a blueprint and a game plan of how you will be approaching your clients as well as non-clients to collect reviews and then ultimately promote reviews. That's what they want to see there. Once you have that policy and procedure update completed, then assuming you've got the green light from your compliance officers to get started, it's pretty straightforward. So you can collect and promote reviews on your own website. You can leverage third-party websites, but what's important about any website that you choose is to ensure that it is designed to comply with the disclosure requirements of the SEC marketing rule. And again, the SEC did a nice job of not saying, hey, open a magazine to a pharmaceutical ad where you have a full page of disclosures. They specifically said you can't do that these disclosures accompanying each and every review should be very short and sweet. They want to see 3 clear and prominent disclosures accompanying each review to first ensure that people reading that review know whether or not it was written by a client of yours or somebody who's never been a client. Maybe they're just an acquaintance, all of which are acceptable. The SEC just wants disclosure around that. The second clear and prominent disclosure is simply indicating whether or not that individual who wrote the review was compensated. And that compensation is not just cash, whether it's a gift card, a dinner, that needs to be disclosed. So something to keep in mind there, but again, a very short and sweet disclosure. And then finally, any material conflicts of interest. So if there's, let's say you work with a certified public accountant as a partner or an estate attorney, you can include them as people that could write a review, but clearly they have a vested interest in giving you a positive review if you're sending business their way. So that would need to be disclosed. And then there is a little bit more to it. We have a pre-publication checklist. So before you publish a review, a handful of things that the SEC is looking for to ensure that reviews don't include particular content that they would consider to be prohibited. But again, pretty straightforward and not very likely that most reviews are going to contain that type of content. And then another question that we get a lot is around Google reviews. And so this is an area where, because Google does not include the disclosures that the SEC is looking for to accompany each review, you need to be really careful here. It's, of course, 100% okay if there are unsolicited reviews that you received on Google. And clearly, being a giant billboard on the internet, if you have reviews on Google, that's certainly a good thing. But if you have those reviews and they're a result of your solicitation, encouraging clients to write a review, and you're unable to put those disclosures out there, that starts to become an area where you could get into a bit of hot water. Or if you have Google reviews and you are speaking with a prospect or put in an email to say, hey, go check out my Google reviews, now you've entangled yourself with that review on Google. And without those disclosures to let a client know or a prospect know what the SEC is looking for from a disclosure perspective, that you could be in hot water there. Now, I don't know how hot that water is going to be as we start to see the SEC and state regulators following the SEC rule in terms of what penalties might look like, or if they just get off with a warning, but something to keep in mind there. So the safest approach, if you do choose to get started with online reviews, is to either one, look at your own website and having the appropriate disclosures accompany the reviews there, or using a third-party platform that is designed for compliance with the marketing rule that encompasses those disclosures. The last thing I would say is, it's still very, very early days on this front. I think advisors that have the opportunity to get started with online reviews, even in the next year and probably even a little longer than that, are still going to be well ahead of the curve from many other advisors that are either going to be prohibited still by their home office or compliance officer from getting started with reviews, as well as many others that just aren't as focused on growing their business from a digital marketing perspective, or perhaps, in some instances have a full book of business and less focused on attracting new clients. And so they're just more a little bit focused on taking care of their current clients. But Sarah, I'll stop there. If there are any questions, I'm happy to dive a little deeper into any particular area, or happy to speak with anybody offline that wants to reach out.
Brian, somebody asked you over the chat for a document, some kind of a like SEC document or something you mentioned. So just make sure that you scan those comments.
Will do. Sure.
Okay, y'all, I'm going to give y'all maybe like 10 seconds to ask a question. And if no one asks a question, then I'm moving on.
So I see one question from my email. I'm going to put that in the chat right now. And then Sarah, I'm happy to take any quick questions. And otherwise, as you move on to the next topic, I'll dig up a couple of additional links to those resources that I can share in the chat as well.
Okay, y'all. So I'm moving on here. We have some people from our community that have come forward to discuss answers to questions that a lot of people have been asking me from our group. They are Mark Meredith of Meredith Wealth and Jamie Menges from PDS Planning. Mark was going to talk about how to start, scale, and grow a flat fee firm. And Jamie was going to discuss how to convert AUM to a flat fee. Gentlemen, who would like to go first?
I can go.
Great, Jamie, are you okay with that? You do get a vote.
That's good. No problem. Thank you for having me, Sarah. Is it good to go?
Yeah, there you go. See, now you're in the spotlight.
I did want to provide a little bit of background on how I decided to start my RIA a few years ago. So prior to that, I was working in a community bank as a financial advisor. And it was kind of like your classic community bank brokerage program where a lot of the advisors were selling insurance products or non-traded REITs or commission-based investment vehicles. And, I decided I was going to be the ethical person and only charge people 1.25% a year on their assets under management by not accepting commissions. And I was just a 22-year-old financial advisor trying to learn the business on the fly. But as I got more and more into factor-based investing strategies, I found a website called Evanston Asset Management probably 10 years ago. And I found that this person was charging a flat fee for financial advice and portfolio management. But it seemed very obscure because I had never heard of anyone doing that before, and I could not get in contact with that person when I tried to communicate with them. I had never saw any interviews with them. And I wondered if it was really a profitable endeavor to go on. And then a few years went by.
Just to interject there, that website is kind of cryptic. I just put it into the chat.
Okay.
So I can understand where you were a little bit kind of like, is this for real? But yeah, Evanston is like kind of one of the quintessential flat fee.
Yeah. And I had emailed him directly and he said he did not have time to talk to me. So I decided, okay, well, maybe that's probably not a good route to go on. And then a few years later, I saw some articles pop up about this guy in Colorado that was starting a flat fee advisory business, and he had a lot of success, James Osborne. And all that stuff just made a ton of sense to me. And I thought that seems like a very good route to go on, but I found every excuse in the world not to do it. So I just stayed at the bank. I was making a very good living there. Eventually, the bank I was working at got bought out. And I decided if I'm not going to do this now, I'll probably never do it. So I started planning my RIA in the background as the merger was going through its process. And I reached out directly to TD Ameritrade to see what I could do to get started. And this was back in the end of 2018. So TD Ameritrade still had good customer service back then, which has changed dramatically since that. But TD Ameritrade put me in touch with a compliance consulting firm on how to file all my regulatory documents, get appointed with the state of Illinois. And then it was around February 1st of 2019, I had filed anonymously to register my RIA in the state of Illinois. And they said it would take 30 to 40 days to get approved. And just a few weeks later, the bank that bought the bank I was working at said, you have 2 weeks to sign a non-solicitation agreement or else you don't work here. So I waited about 13 days out of the 14 they gave me, and then I turned in my resignation. And first day I started my RIA, I got a cease and desist order from the bank telling me I had to stop all operation. It was about 4 hours after I had resigned. So they knew what I was up to, I guess. So TD Ameritrade again came in handy by recommending a securities lawyer that I could contact. But at the end of the day, it was just them trying to intimidate me. I didn't have any agreements in place to where I wasn't able to solicit clients or compete with them. So that was how it all started. Oh, and I didn't mention, but my wife was 7.5 months pregnant when I decided to do all this with our second child. And so it was a very stressful time in my life. But shortly after that, I had identified maybe 90 clients or so that I wanted to contact and to see if they would join me at my new firm. And I think about 80 of them did come with me. And those people became big referral sources. So in this geographical area I'm in, there was no fee-only firms at all. I was the only NAPFA firm, the only fee-only firm, and definitely the only flat fee firm. So word got out, people talked about it, that this business was as conflict-free as it could possibly be, hopefully. In 1 year, I had one client send me 5 new clients, so the people is how I grew the business. I didn't have any marketing plan. I didn't spend any money on advertising. It was solely as a result of talking to the accountants I knew in the area, the estate planning attorneys in the area, the bankers that I knew, and telling them about what I was doing. And then all the existing clients, I think a lot of them were scratching their head as to what is a flat fee model. They didn't really get it, I don't think. But once you say you're paying $12,000 a year, working with me at the old firm, now you're going to pay $5,700 a year or whatever. That was like music to their ears, I think. So it was a pretty easy decision to follow me. You get the same advisor, same portfolio. I'm just 4 miles that way. So it all worked out very well. I was the only person in the area on the NAPFA Find Your Advisor site. I think there's a few more now. So pretty early on, I started getting natural inquiries through the NAPFA site, through feelingnetwork.com, on top of all the clients referring. So I added about 60 clients on top of the 80 I had brought with me. And I have not taken any new clients this year. I just hired a new advisor last week that'll be joining me soon. So I guess my belief always was, if you do as good of a job as possible for the client in the most transparent manner, they will help you grow your business.
So these are some of the questions here. Mark, hold on.
Oh, you want me to answer those?
There were some of them.
Can you
Hold
pull
on.
that back up?
No, I think I have to unspotlight you, sorry.
Oh, how did I come up with the flat fee amount?
Yeah,
Yeah, initially what I did was I wanted to accommodate as many people as possible. So I charged a AUM fee, which was 0.9%, with an $1,800 minimum and a $6,750 maximum. And that was a big mistake I made, because the goal, I would say, for most people should not be to try to accommodate anybody or everybody. You should try to accommodate the people that you really want to work with, because there are a sufficient supply of those people. A hybrid approach is allowed. That's kind of what I did. I don't know what too low of a fee is, in my opinion. I've thought about that a bit. Under $4,000 a year seems to be getting a little thin, I would imagine. It really depends on what you're doing for the client and how scalable it is. So the clients I have, they're paying the grandfathered lower fee. They're getting the same service and same hours as the other clients paying more. And that's another reason I regret that. So on the financial planning, limited engagements and deliverables, I am no longer offering that service. So I don't know if I'm equipped to comment on that, but I am no longer doing limited engagements. I only work with clients on an ongoing basis. And how does one price investment management on top of planning services? I think the best way is as simple as possible and to include it all in one fee. I'm sure there's plenty of different opinions on that and different models do work. I like simplicity, you know, the simpler, the better. And how does one offer and price ongoing touch-ups? I don't offer that. I did add Holistiplan to my software stack this year, and that's been really helpful. Initially, I was doing all my tax planning through Right Capital, and that's pretty good, but Holistiplan allows one to get a bit more precise, in my opinion. And it's a very convenient way to store everyone's historical tax returns and look at them year by year in comparisons. And you can run a lot of cool tax scenarios in Holistiplan. I think it's a big value add for clients. Basically, it gets to the point where you're doing everything tax-wise for the client except filing the return. So I think it makes their accountant's job pretty easy if you just send them the Holistiplan summary. Scaling the flat fee subscription model between clients 1 and 50, that's going to be a little bit different for me because I had so many come on at exactly the same time. So it was kind of chaotic all of 2019, just getting everyone onboarded. But as everyone here probably knows, the longer you work with a client, the more seamless it gets. I do wonder how scalable it is to have a flat fee firm with, you know, hundreds of advisors. I'm not sure if that would work or not. I'm not going to be the guy that finds that out. Advice only does seem like a niche to me. I think the DIY investors do really target advice only. I tend to not provide an advice only business. All of the clients here have portfolio management through the firm. Flat fee. I don't know what the last question is wanting exactly. The flat fee is just how you're charging someone for the service. A subscription, I think a lot of times would be under the advice only model to where there is no portfolio involved in that. I would say most of my clients would be delegators as opposed to DIY investors.
And would you bill monthly, quarterly?
Monthly.
Why did you designate that?
Well, initially, I just thought that was a way to stay on top of every client's billing, and I just never changed it since then. With a lot of clients coming on board at once, I wanted to make sure everything was done accurately. And, you know, I wanted cash flow fairly immediately too, which didn't end up being a problem. But I still think there are benefits to doing it a month. It takes me 10 minutes a month to bill clients through AdviseOn. So it's not a lot of effort there.
So Mark, when you were in the beginning and all this crazy stuff was happening, you know, you got a kid, you get another kid on the way, your company, just your past company gives you a cease and desist letter. Like, what was it that made you say, well, I'm going to actually move forward with this instead of going to work for Charles Schwab?
Well, those thoughts crossed my mind. I thought I was doomed after the first day because this is a $10 billion bank threatening my livelihood, and I have no capability to defeat them in court. But TD Ameritrade gave me a great recommendation for the attorney. He was out in Beverly Hills, and it was called the Patrick Burns Law Firm. If you want to, anybody needs a securities lawyer. And he was really able to put my mind at peace, telling me that the bank had no grounds to stand on. He was pretty vicious in responding back to their letter. He did have a $600 hourly fee, for his service with $5,000 up front. And it was the best money I ever spent. So I think there's probably financial advisors here that are worth $600 an hour. When it comes to determining what your flat advisory fee is, or if you are under an hourly model, I think if you're as skillful as someone like that, you're worth your weight in gold. And he was able to get that all behind me within probably 4 weeks after I started. I didn't have to pay my past employer anything. I didn't have to settle anything. I didn't have to restrict doing business at all. My sister is also an attorney, and she was able to give me some reassurance. But the letter they sent me was extremely frightening. I mean, I went home my first day and told my wife that we were going to get sued into oblivion. The attorneys said, well, they're not going to write you a non-scary cease and desist letter. It's going to be very scary. And that was the truth. It was like 5 pages long. They were saying I stole all this client data, that I told clients before I left that I was leaving, and I was soliciting them while I was still working there. So it was, very stressful, but I looked at it as there's no other way. It's either this or I'll get into farming or something. I don't know. I wasn't going to go work for anybody else at that point. There was no way.
Okay. All right, y'all. So I'm just going to open this up. Does anybody have any questions for Mark? I know that we went over a lot, and there certainly were a lot of questions that y'all sent in before. I'm not sure how well we answered them, but this is your chance. If you asked a question and we didn't answer it correctly, please speak up now.
Hey, Mark, this is Chris. Thanks for sharing your story. So how did you realize that you were underpricing people in the beginning, and how did you determine what increases to make over time? Was it based on onboarding a certain number of people and then you decided to increase? Was it just based on the time that you were spending on this work that you realized you were being underpaid? What does the evolution of your pricing look like?
Well, I think the mindset I had at the beginning was flawed. I had a bit of a scarcity mentality, which I think we should all have, an abundance mentality, because there are so many people out there that want and need advice at a fair price. And the way I kind of looked at it is, well, you only have so many seats on the bus, right? Maybe it's 100 clients or 150, whatever you think you can handle for what you're providing. It still wasn't fair to me that I had some clients paying less than others for the same exact service, and the only difference was the size of the portfolio. So why was I charging some clients $5,700 a year and other clients were paying $2,500? And, the mistake I made was trying to accommodate some lesser wealth people that I had worked with at my prior firm. And those took away seats on the bus. The firm could be a little bit more profitable. That doesn't really matter, because at a certain point, your income is sufficient, but you're taking away time and hours from a slot that could be filled with a client that is paying the fee posted on the website. I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but it's just something that has evolved a little bit over time.
Yeah, Mark, do you think it would be helpful for people that are in this position for them to be very intentional before they even start building about
Yes.
who it is that they want to work with, and to write out a list of characteristics that that person should have?
Yeah, I
would
do.
help.
I mean, that's something I didn't really do. But if I had to do it all over again, I would be more strict on who gets allowed on board the ship, as Nick Murray likes to say. You know, we all have a long runway ahead of us, and the clients will come. I mean, even if you get one client a month on average, after 5 years, you have 60 clients, and you're making a very good living.
Well, the clients will come if you make them come, right? Yeah, I mean, you do have to actually actively, like,
Yeah.
either through your service or whatever, right? So, okay. So there's another question from the group. How did you overcome the change for clients from paying out of their investments versus writing a monthly check?
All the clients still pay out of their investments.
They still do. Okay, is there anybody here that pays that the clients pay a monthly check that's not debited from the custodian? Okay, Chris, who else?
We do.
Okay, Fenway. Tony, okay, what advice would you have for our group members about how to make clients more comfortable with that?
I have
I
thoughts on that.
actually, go ahead.
Well, we deal strictly in the retirement space, so I can't think rationally why anybody would pay an otherwise deductible expense through a qualified plan where they don't get a deduction, and in some instances disqualify themselves for any available tax credits. So we charge employers directly. That makes that quite succinct and easy. In the individual space, that may vary.
And we do both. We allow people to write us checks, but we also can pull money out of clients' accounts. And the check aspect is becoming a real hassle. US mail is not reliable, and so many things get sent back incorrectly. So we're looking at other methods for doing this, possibly going with Advice Pay, who will let the clients pay with the credit card or an ACH, and also still allow checks or letting us pull the payment right out of the account.
I would say the easiest thing to do is just do it from the beginning. If you have an existing client that you're trying to transfer over to check writing, I don't know if it's absolutely necessary, but if you sign a new one, then have them do it by check. From a business perspective, I like the fact that they see their checking account with their fee to me. And the fact that I don't allow credit cards on purpose. Because of the fees, I only allow ACH transfers. So I don't allow check writing per se. I only allow ACH transfers because it's the cheapest from a fee perspective.
But do people object? Do people ask questions? Do they get uncomfortable about, oh my gosh, like, you have to send you $200. What did you do this month? Like, does anyone get objections?
We are strictly fee for service, so we only send an invoice after we provide our services. We are not a retainer or monthly ongoing payment model.
And knock wood, I've been doing this for 15 years and I've never had a client say, oh, you didn't do enough work for me. Oh, I'm sorry, once.
Okay, good. Now, one of the things that I've heard is, Canute, are you there? Okay, I don't know where Canute is. Maybe he's on mute.
I'm here.
Okay, so Canute, you just feel free to chime in here. There's us advisors in Washington State that I guess they have to, every month, they have to send out, every time they bill, they have to send a letter to the client saying, this is what you paid for my services this month, okay? And one of the people said that he wasn't just gonna send the bill, and he included a summary of everything he did that month. I think that's cool. And, I'm obviously not a financial advisor, but I can say that for some of my clients, I actually email a few of my clients every single day telling them what I did for them. And those are actually my most satisfied clients. Like in terms of referrals, in terms of like never had a question, they never, ever question me. So this is the transparency movement. And I know that to do this in practice is very taxing.
Well,
But,
I'm not sure it has to be very taxing. and this is what I mean, and here's the context. As many people on this call know, many of the states are worried about this notion of monthly billing. And what did you do for me last month? You know, where's the service? Show me the service, sort of thing. So the context in which I'm speaking about this, after last month's call, we met with the Commissioner of Colorado on her concerns about flat fees and a number of issues. But this issue came up, and the issue of you can't charge for availability. The issue of what did you do for me last month? And we went back and forth, and I followed up with a letter to suggest that I think there may be some misunderstandings about what it is to be a retainer client, what it is to charge a retainer fee, from the perspective of an engagement. An engagement is generally either a project or an annual engagement. And guess what? Sometimes the fees are broken up monthly, sometimes quarterly. But the larger point I suggested to her was that financial planners are not producing widgets. They don't do 30 widgets a month to meet their sales goal. The nature of financial planning engagements is just so totally different. But the larger point I suggested was on a regular basis, and I suggested quarterly, not monthly, that there should be some communication from the advisor planner, say, dear Mr. and Mrs. Smith, this is what I did for you last month. And in fact, Chris provided me a really good example of a list of bullet points. This is what we did for you last quarter, I think it was, and this is what we're gonna do for you next quarter. And I shared that with the folks in Colorado, and they said, well, that seemed reasonable. So to the extent that the issue of monthly billing, quarterly billing, and trying to match it with, as you're talking about, Sarah, services delivered, in this one instance, in this one engagement, they said they thought it was reasonable. Chris's list was very short, but it was very detailed. And I think the detail part of it is what matters. You didn't just deliver a financial planning, blah, 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 blah. It was specific. So anyway,
Right.
That's.
It was specific and clear.
It was specific and clear.
Right.
And
Okay.
they liked it.
Ding, 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 everybody. Okay.
They liked it. They liked it.
Liked it. Okay. So here we are. Okay. Pioneering a new way of doing business. And I think this is a pretty obvious sign of what a best practice may be.
So, I mean, I walked away from that meeting, and I've got two other points I want to make, but I don't want to take up your meeting, Sarah. I walked away from that meeting thinking that, that there may be some good faith, and I underscore good faith misunderstandings, because obviously we live in a world where there are a lot of bad faith misunderstandings, but I think there's some good faith misunderstandings about what it is that flat fee advisors do and how they do it, from the point of view, at least of this one jurisdiction. So.
Okay, Jamie, I know you've been so patient, and I'm sorry, but let me just, can I just ask one more question, and then we'll jump to you, Jamie? Okay. Thank you. So.
Sure.
Daniel Bishop, you raised your hand. Did you have a question?
Yeah, it's sort of a question. It's sort of a comment. Just in a lot of states, East and West Coast, if you're using the word subscription, or if you're using the word retainer, those things already have so much legal precedence in other ways that we're putting more garbage in to the legislators. They're hearing something else.
Right.
Whereas if you're just saying, hey, I provide this annual financial planning service and I allow my clients to pay for it monthly or whatever, oh, that's perfectly fine. But as soon as you start adding a lot of fancy words on it, that sometimes in some, like, subscription in the context of lawyers means completely different things. And so does a retainer.
Right.
We don't have a pool of money that we're working off of in an hourly, so a lot of it's our own fault for not having really clear, precise language that's not conflicting with the regulators.
Good
Thank
point.
you so much. Can I please move to the next speaker? Does anybody disagree? Okay, good. Jamie.
Hey, everybody. Jamie Mangus, PDS Planning. We are in Columbus, Ohio, suburb there, Dublin. We are about 14 or 15 people. I say 14 or 15. We're in the process of hiring somebody. The firm was founded in 1985 and went through several iterations, but essentially in 2017, we were just kind of looking for a different way to do business. So we had clients that were on AUM fees. We had clients that were on, I'm laughing at Daniel's last comment, but we had clients that were on retainer fees, which was a poor choice of words. And we recognized that, but essentially it was a flat fee. The formula made no sense. We didn't consistently apply it. We got to the point where we said, AUM fees don't make sense for all the reasons I don't need to rehash for this audience. And so we sat down and just tried to determine what's the best way to go about this. And we redesigned a fee structure that worked for us, that helped us identify what the flat fees, should be. And if anybody saw the intro video that Sarah used for one of these, I took 7 or 8 minutes and talked about for us the why. Why did we want to do this as a firm? So this is, again, thinking bigger. If you're already, you're not starting a firm, you're trying to convert. I would encourage you to go back and listen to that. I'll just, for the sake of time, point to that rather than listening to me say it again. But we knew it was the right way. We wanted something better than what we were currently doing. We weren't consistently applying the things that we were trying to do. And we actually believe this would allow us to charge more over time. And so once you get through the why, am I going to do this? Like, why am I going to do it? Then it's kind of the how. First thing we wanted buy-in across the board. We wanted buy-in, and that's our staff. So everybody immediately, had that same aha moment. This makes total sense for us. We like it. We've got 500 plus, between 500 and 600 clients, and we knew that this would be better for them. We got a buy-in from our COIs. We went and talked to them about it. That was a marketing opportunity, of course. And then what we've done since then is we've continually evolved how this pricing formula works. And I will tell you that with 14 employees, probably 5,500 square feet of office space. I mean, we're a different entity than Mark's firm, I think, at this point. And so there are some challenges that are different for us than there are for everybody else. I heard Mark say, like, I'm not going to have, a large firm. And boy, there's days I'd like to be sitting in that chair. But, I think one of the things that we've recognized is that it's really difficult to do this for small clients. And I would also say we've completely eliminated doing any project level work. It gets in the way. We feel like we can't deliver advice without going so far down the rabbit hole of data gathering that there'd almost be no way for us to price our time that way. All of our clients receive comprehensive financial planning, tax planning, estate insurance, all those things, as well as portfolio management on an ongoing basis. And, for us, it's been a great way to grow our message. There's not a lot of firms our size nationally doing this. And so when clients want a firm with some history, again, 1985, if they want a firm with a broader bench or a deeper depth, and they like to see these pods of teams within the organization, we were able to answer that. And then I think what we're learning about ourselves is that we have to get over some of the imposter syndrome on the fee quoting, and we need to move upstream. I mean, the reality is, if we want to grow the organization and accomplish the things that we want to accomplish as a group, financially, professionally, career opportunities, growth, et cetera, we have to move upstream. And so I think we've started to consider like where that takes us from the level of client that we're dealing with and the complexity of their issues. And that's not to say that you couldn't do all those things on your own. I don't for one moment believe there's a best model out there. I could make a case for myself personally to run my own solo practitioner firm and be able to confidently deliver similar, better, the same type of value that my organization PDS delivers from the foothold of 15 people. So I'm trying to sprint through some of those thoughts, but I'd really prefer to open it up to questions and then just address what you'd like. and take it from there.
Jamie, that is wonderful. Thank you. So Bill Hines has a question. How did you get the AUM clients out of your management, or are you still managing their assets? Bill, are you saying, are you like asking, did they go from being in-house to outsourcing it? Bill, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you had some folks, you're doing the AUM rate table, then maybe just flat fee for AUM. So did you move them between those two models, or did you just get it completely out of managing assets altogether, or you're still doing it and that's part of your flat rate, your flat fee?
So we have clients right now, investment only clients that we manage their portfolio, and that's really all we do. So if you think, nonprofit, foundations, endowments, also, some individuals and families who that's solely what they ask us to do. And so we will do that, but we will just do it for a flat fee. And those that we had in that conversion, we just went to them and sat, we were able to look at what are we doing for them? Are there a bunch of accounts? Is it multiple custodians? Like, we looked at some of the factors that create time and involvement. And our pricing, I always tell people this because I don't ever want to back us into a corner on an hourly rate, is I tell folks, I say it's based upon the time, the resources, and the value we provide. And the value we provide does leave me a little bit of wiggle room in terms of determining, for example, how difficult is a client going to be? Is it somebody we want to work with to begin with? But if it is, we know just kind of how needy they may be from time to time. We're able to price that accordingly because that's bringing a greater value to them. This is easy.
Hey, Jamie, thanks for sharing your story today. As a younger advisor who's new to this business, but sees themselves potentially growing the firm into something that resembles PDS, what advice would you give your younger self in order to establish a practice that is scalable, or what changes would you have made early on to make sure that you could grow it, to this size?
So I must look old. I didn't start the firm, but I am a second generation owner. And what I would tell you is, from my experience of trying to shape and mold that piece to what you're trying to build, and I believe that was Chris asking the question, I would tell you to be selective. A lot of the things Mark talked about, because it's almost impossible to really tidy up or clean up a book of business or a client roster. And the reason why is because everybody on this call is probably in this business because they genuinely care about people. And so we'd like to make business decisions that are cold and calculated from time to time. And it's just almost an impossibility. So the sooner you can be selective about who's, you provide your services to, the easier it will become over time to go to them and say, look, Mark was talking about, I've got clients at 5,700 and those at 2,500. And in a more perfect world, if you had all the right people as clients, I think you'd be able to go to that group of 2,500 and say, look, I respect our relationship. I want it to continue. I want you to understand how my business is run and what decisions I need to make. And so I need to get you to this level that everyone else is at. And we don't have to get there on day one. Maybe there's a 3-year schedule that we can apply here to help you ease into that and match up with what you need. But, I think it's really about shaping your client roster with people who have buy-in. One of the things I'd tell you, our experience has been, is I'd kind of written this spectrum out a few years ago. I DIY, do-it-yourselfers on one end, and I delegators on the other, and in the middle were the validators. And I thought the validators could really be served by this model. And I really am starting to doubt that. We're having trouble making them maintain their stickiness as clients. And so I think really advisory firms who charge recurring fees need to be focused on that delegator marketplace. Because if you have clients coming on and off, we track new clients, adjusted fees, and terminated clients very closely every year. And I've got that data going back for about 10 years now. That's something that can become disruptive to your growth. So as you're scaling up from client 1 or client 25 to client 150 where you have to start bringing on additional teams, I would tell you to just really, find people that are going to find value in your proposition.
Thanks, Jamie. I appreciate it.
All right, so the chat's exploding here. Can you walk us through how you would price clients with varying levels of complexity? Is that something you would consider including on your website?
Yeah. So we've looked at putting the pricing on the website. We've done some things. So we had some terminology for this on a previous iteration of our website, but I'm going to call it basic, moderate, and complex clients. And we tried to kind of just fit clients, and we wanted to give them a self-selection option. But what you ultimately find is everybody says they're just moderate. Nobody wants to be basic, and they know they don't want to pay for complex or for complexity. So we kind of moved away from that. And really what we're trying to do is create better personas for people to see and identify with in stages of their life. But we do price those things differently. So I think that the next evolution of this for us is that we're going to have investment only clients, kind of some of the stuff I touched on earlier, again, foundations, endowments, not-for-profits. And then we're going to have clients who, in our language, and if you looked at our site today, don't be confused by this because there's some overlap to what I'm about to say, but we'll have clients that have foundational wealth. And that means people who are really starting to build a level of wealth to create the security they need to accomplish their goals. And it's no longer the person trying to, the airplane trying to get off the ground. These are people who are starting to getting close to a cruising altitude where, maybe, and I'll give you some parameters for it. Maybe it's $1.5 million up to about $5 million of investable assets, a net worth that's probably in the 2 to 3.5x range. And those folks, we want to make sure we've got all the modeling in place and that we're optimizing their wealth. We're not, we're getting rid of the old insurance contracts that were cash value and the bad annuity they bought in the last recession and some of those things, and really getting everything cleaned up and optimized for them, and then doing the modeling to show them, hey, we're reaching these goals. The next group after that, they've kind of reached that position in life where they realize, I don't need you to tell me I'm on track. That question's answered. Now I've got some more complex concerns. I've got, this wealth, how do I get it distributed to my kids effectively? Or how do I teach my kids along the way that this isn't their lifeline? This is wealth that the family has, and we're trying to create maybe multi-generational wealth. And I'm not talking family office. I'm just saying, my parents, I inherited a little bit from my parents. I want our kids to inherit something, and I want everybody to protect, preserve, and grow what they inherit so that we can, create this family line for it. And I think that's how we're starting to look at people and trying to redo our pricing. But I would segment that pricing as well, based upon kind of where that level of complexity comes in, because the complexity is going to drive, the time and the people you have to have on that. Do I have to serve them as a shareholder at the organization and a top level manager, or can we work with some of our other staff to do those things, at a lower level and a lower salary rate?
That question was for me. I hope you don't mind going into a little bit more detail. Me personally, I'm trying to create a pricing tier that works across stages. I appreciate narrowing in your focus for some people, but as you look to scale it or work with people across lifespans of complexity, I loosely tried to base it on 4 buckets, starting from career starter to mid-career, late career retiree, and then having 4 complexity-based additions for equity comp, business owner, complex trust estate plan considerations, or alternative investments. So I know it's not perfect. I'm curious, you have to, with the number of people you have some sort of internal model, unless you're the one quoting fees for every client. So you guys are consistent across your firm. I'm curious if you could share a little more detail with us about how your firm approaches actually pricing clients, talking specific dollars.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like what you're suggesting, Matt. So we've got pricing based upon modules of planning. And, I think you listed out 4 of them there, alternative investments being one. So that's a great example. So, if we bring a client on and we try to ascertain what level are you going to participate in private markets, and you want us to review deal flow.
Yep.
How consistent is that? So we are looking at those things. Are you bringing legacy positions? Stock options is obviously a big one. Right. When we get into, so we look at every client has base needs. Like there's a correlation across every single client. And to us, that is essentially portfolio management. And then we call it phone and email support. Like there's going to be things throughout the year. You just have to kind of warranty all the recommendations that you make and kind of go through those things. In addition to that, everybody probably takes on at least one meeting a year. Some clients might be taking on or have the expectation of quarterly meetings. So we've got to, kind of price those things in. And then from there, it gets into how complex is the estate stuff. Are we helping adult children along the way where the parent might be, in essence, and if anybody's like with the SEC, please plug your ears, but like, right, like if the parent pays for the child's planning as part of the multi-generational family planning, really, that's a great way to transfer some wealth. An effective way to do it. So what are we doing tax planning, or are we just working with the CPA? And there's a level of complexity, and I'm a CPA, but there's a level of complexity where I say, hey, we need to involve your accountant on a regular basis on this planning. So we have different pricing for that than if we're driving it through, our own software solution. So yeah, I think you're right on line, Matt, with cross-sectioning it. Almost when you were describing it, I was thinking of a grid, but then the more I thought about it, really, you've got what we've got, which is like down the left side are all the different services, and across the top are all the different types of clients.
Excluding the top 25% of your clients, could you give us a sense for the actual dollar amounts you would charge basic, medium, complex, and exclude the super high end, high net worth complex cases? Yeah,
I mean, I would think, and I'll tell you what we're doing now, and then like the evolution of where we're headed, where the head's at. So for asset management, it starts at $3,500 and it kind of ranges up to, probably top end, like maybe $15,000. And those are some really unique things where like we're meeting quarterly with boards and managing like 5 investment policy statements for them. And then for like what is on our website today, foundational planning clients, that's about $5,400. But that was for the person who we said, like, look, you don't need a really detailed financial plan. You need us to like chart the course for you, tell you what to avoid, what to participate in as you start to grow your wealth. And so I always told people that's like 25 to 35 years old. Your life will get more complex, and then you'll become a comprehensive wealth planning client. That comprehensive wealth planning client kind of started at about 7,700 and, went up to 15. And again, I'm kind of excluding like the really customized client experiences. And so that, that median was probably close to the average, like right in the middle of that, so 10 to 12,000 was probably the sweet spot for it. What we've learned is like these foundational clients, as we called them previously, these $5,400 clients, we end up just getting too involved. And the reality is like to them, for us to get them from $5,400 to a comprehensive pricing structure of just call it 10 to 12, it was hard for them to bite that off. That's a big number for somebody to go to that has maybe $300,000 to $500,000 of investment assets over time. So that's the forced upstream for us. I think if I were working in a home office or in a single studio office, I really think that's a group that can be tackled very effectively. Us organizationally and what we're trying to create, I think what we've chosen to do is just to kind of step into a different arena. Again, it's not because somebody else couldn't do it on a solo basis. I'm just saying like we're kind of forced to where we can go. Like we got 15 people. We don't all fit in certain rooms like a more sole proprietor advisor does. And again, please everybody recognize that is not me saying if you're a complex client, you need a big team of people. I'm saying we're a big team of people. We probably can only work and serve properly and price properly the more complex clients.
Thank you for sharing. Appreciate it.
Wow, I mean, there's so many comments here in the chat. The one most connected here is, I would say, start with from Carrie and Steve of Fenway Financial. For newer advisors, you are hearing a good range of clients that most of us can reasonably handle. 50 to 150 with about 100 being a sweet spot is what we've learned. Run your numbers from there about how much gross revenue per advisor you need to generate to cover expenses, salary, and reasonable profit. This is a business and you need to build that profit margin in. for just in case times. And then Chris Randall is asking, what are ballpark net profit margins for boutique and enterprise practices? Mark Meredith says 90, well, hold on a sec. I'm not sure if you were answering that question that Chris asked, but so Chris is asking, what are the net profit margins ballpark?
If somebody can show me how to get to 90%, I'd be pretty thrilled. And I'd only be available for this call for a few more years. No, for us at the enterprise level, so we've always kind of thought of building our P&L from the bottom up. So we prefer, our thoughts are 20% is our target profit margin. And we have these internal rules of thumb that say if we're below 20%, we're probably too heavy on overhead.
Jamie, I'm sorry, Jamie, 20% net or gross profit margin?
Net.
Okay,
Net. So that's after owner salaries.
right.
That's just, but we're an S corp, so that's just K1. If I can say it that way to clarify that. So we think 20 to 25 is a good spot. It's a fair spot. It's not a selfish position to be in. And we've always said if we go over 25%, we're not reinvesting in the business the right way. So that was our thought. And that's not to say that if you're over 25%, you're not reinvesting in your business. The margins do get compressed on the flat fee side of this. If you don't do a great job of increasing fees over time, the margins are bound to be compressed, of course. So and that's another part of our reason to kind of move upstream is just to control the cost of employees and the number of people that they're serving. And so that's why we had to, again, why we're kind of being forced upstream almost in a sense.
Okay, y'all, just want to also mention, there are 2 videos that are in the YouTube playlist that I put into the chat. One of the videos is Jamie from another webinar we have explaining his process for converting AUM to flat. And then another one is from Richard Chen, who is a lawyer for RIA firms. And he explains how to structure your contracts to include inflation adjustment.
Mhm.
Okay, so if you want those, just send me a DM directly and I'll send that YouTube playlist to you. You should all be following me on YouTube because I post videos on this topic. So the next question was from Eric. Do most without assets, say 500,000 or more, self-select out, or do they still see value in planning?
So if this is someone that's coming to us through our website or been referred to us and they come and they go, I have 500,000 or more, but they don't want us to manage it. I think that's maybe where the question goes. We've had a few of those, and these are the validators. These are people who are saying, look, I've got a fear that I've missed something, or I've just got a handful of questions. And at the end of the day, it might not be a project, but it's a 1 to 2 year engagement before they get what they want and they move on. And so lessons learned are that we don't think those are good clients for us anymore. And, we appreciate what they're looking for, but, we don't think that's a fit. We are pretty passively managed. So a lot of Vanguard iShares stuff. So if a client is managing their own money, chances are they're using what we use. In most cases, those that are managing their own stock portfolio and just kind of jockeying that around, I don't know that they've got the awareness to come find an advisor. I just think their view of the world's different. So the client who does come to us and go, I don't need asset management, I just want advice. Usually when we dig a little deeper, we find that they're following a very similar investment philosophy to us. And over time, they migrate that responsibility to us. And I've got a perfect example of a woman that we're working with over the last year and a half, who at first didn't allow us to have anything. We were sending her the trades to clean up a very messy stock portfolio. And here we are, we're probably about 13 months in, and we have full discretion now over her portfolios.
Are you referring those clients that only want validation out?
Yeah, there's a few hourly planners here in Central Ohio that we will give a name out. If we think these folks are kind, like if they will treat these advisors that we refer them to, like, with respect generally. And so we've done that on several instances. Yeah, I mean, we're not the one thing I tell every prospect I sit down with, the first thing I tell them is, you don't need an advisor. You're going to hire an advisor for one of a couple of reasons, but people have been retiring successfully for generations without advisors. So it can be done. You're going to hire us if you've got some emotional discipline challenges. If you don't want to take, like, if you don't have an interest in it, and having an interest in it oftentimes is a function of time. Like, I don't have time to do this, which means you haven't made time to do it because you don't have an interest. Or, I mean, really, very often you might see this as you've got one spouse saying, yeah, I'm here because of my other spouse. And the other spouse is going, well, that's because you don't know what you're doing, right? And so you've just got this conflict where you really need somebody to step in and provide professional counsel to give everybody some harmony inside the household for that.
Amen to that, bro.
Happy, yep. We want happy people at home.
Right, right. Keep society intact. Okay, good. Now, Knut, are you still here?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to talk for?
Sarah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just saw a question. I just want to clarify it for Chris. I said that validators are difficult to work with. So in my opinion, so are DIYers. And that's not because they're difficult people. It's just they don't value advice. They're really looking for, just to make sure they've got the fear of missing out. They just want to make sure they didn't miss something. That's my opinion, I mean, for what it's worth.
All right. Knut, Jamie,
Yes.
thank you so much. Okay,
Yes,
Knut, legal update.
legal update. Since
First
the
of all,
last,
wait, I just want to say something. If y'all aren't following Knut on Twitter and on LinkedIn, please do so. Knut, do you have a mailing list? Do you have an email newsletter?
yes, I do. Yes.
Okay.
I'm glad to put anybody on it that wants to be on it.
Okay, send Knut a message, please, y'all, because the name of fiduciary has obviously been tarnished to the point of oblivion, but here he is fighting for it. And I think the lessons that you can learn from someone who triumphs the fiduciary standard are so relevant to us in our movement and what we're doing. So please follow Knut as much as you can. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Last month's meeting, since last month's meeting, which I just referenced a few, 20 or 30 minutes ago, I met with the Commissioner of Colorado on their concerns about flat fees. And I did that after seeing they have a 7-page letter expressing their concerns. Michael Kitces has weighed in with a much longer letter, as we can well imagine, on his response, explaining flat fees. And so I spent 45 minutes on a call, and I went down several points. And I walked away from that call sort of scratching my head a little bit, because I got two very different versions of what was going on between the state of Colorado and the state of Michael Kitces. And I followed up that up with a 1-page letter making 3 basic suggestions or observations, and then included Chris Randall's half-page bullet points, because this issue of relating fees charged with services rendered is a big point for Colorado, as it is for other states. And then Colorado is going to come out with an updated letter of their views. But again, I walked away saying that the commissioners seem to understand the different nature of what flat fee planners and advisors are doing, and it was essentially basically in agreement. Now, as some of you have heard before, I framed it around the point that the Institute per se is not taking a position between AUM, flat fee, fixed fee, hourly. What the Institute is taking a position is that first of all fees only advisors are years and years ahead of those on the other side whose commissions are much more opaque, A, and B, the real issue is, for whatever fee you use, is it really transparent? Is it really clear? And is it really simple? So Mr. and Mrs. Smith can say in January of this coming year, gosh, Heath or Chris or Bill, last year he did this for me, and this is what I paid for it. So that's just the way that I've sort of tried to simplify it, to say what you got, and then also say that, you guys are leading the pack in terms of transparency, clarity, and simplicity. Just look on your bloody email, look on your bloody websites. My goodness, you are setting a new standard, and that's what I say that the Institute is so interested in, because the lack of that is such a big problem. So there's a short context. So we have this meeting, have this follow up. There seems to be agreement. Now, since then, just by chance, yesterday in Boston at the Investment News Conference, I didn't see any of you guys there. This is a different group. As many of you may know, Jeff Benjamin is very interested in this issue. He'll write on it. He'll write about it every chance he gets. So he invited me on a flat fee panel, which included Rick Ferry and another advisor. And so I basically expressed the same view there in terms of what I think is important, and that what separates the fee-only financial fiduciaries from everybody else. And I think of us as in the 7%. It's the other 93% that are doing something else, that can't do what you can do. So that's the context. Then just one follow-up. Then by chance, the Institute has been working with NASA on a couple of other things over this last year, and just by chance, I will be meeting tomorrow with a couple of folks from NASA executive team to cover a number of issues, and this will be on the agenda. And one of my objectives is to get ourselves in a position that we can have a constructive dialogue about what really, in our humble, modest views, is so important about flat fees, fixed fees, as compared to AUM, and address some of the concerns that we have heard about, that you maybe have experienced yourself out there from the various states. So I'll stop right there and just say, in terms of this is what we've been doing. And I guess the only other thing to add is, why is the Institute for the Fiduciary Standard doing this? Well, because as I look over the last several months at what's going on the social media, this issue is generating the energy and the enthusiasm and the passion for fee-only fiduciaries that I don't see many other places. So that's why we're interested. I'll stop now, Sarah, but thank you.
Knut, that's awesome. Does anyone have any comments on that?
Yeah, I have a quick question. Knut, Scott Zaleski.
Yes.
In your conversations with Colorado or any other regulators, I'd be curious to know, is there an issue mainly with advisors that are not managing money as part of their offering, or does it encompass any advisor that's doing a fixed flat fee or hourly type of model?
Okay. One key issue is, and you guys have heard this before, this is not going to be new, is they look at a monthly subscription / retainer, and the other guy, and then they looked at, and then they said, well, what did you do for the Smiths during this month? And, that appears to be the concern there, and which conceptually I don't understand. And on a practical basis, again, financial planners are not in the business of producing widgets on a monthly basis. So, it doesn't make much sense to me. So now part of what did come through in that meeting was, first of all, she emphasized again and again, this is not a rule. And the most it is in some respects is a recommendation or observations. So, but she was very clear that these were recommendations. So,
well, I guess maybe where I was going with the question is more along the lines of, if you have two advisors that are doing exactly the same thing with clients, and it's full service, let's call it, for lack of another name, they're doing planning, they're managing clients' money, they're doing everything. One advisor's charging an AUM fee, and no other planning fees, it's all wrapped up in AUM, and another advisor is charging a fixed fee, whether it's quarterly or monthly or anything you want to call it, it's a fixed flat fee. Right. Are they treating those two advisors differently today?
They are viewing the AUM model differently from the flat fee model. And here's what I think, but okay, we didn't get into that level. We were 40, 45 minutes on the phone. We only got so far, but again, I'm hoping that we'll get to that level. I'm guessing there is a built-in notion of what the AUM advisor does, that even if it's not specified per se, although hopefully in the engagement agreement there's there, but my sense is that there's the notion that the AUM guy is doing A, B, C, and D already, and so where we're not, where the flat fee guy is or is not doing that. So I'm guessing that's the part of, might be a bias, or maybe I think a misunderstanding. And so this is where, in my view, again, this simple half-page set of bullet points that Chris produced to say, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, this is what we did for your last quarter, and this is what we plan to do, our goals for this coming quarter. It seemed to be very powerful to them, because there it was in clear language. This is what we did for you. So, but so I guess I'm just going to give the conversation, the discussion is not done. I'm hoping that after we come through this next meeting, that there'll be an opportunity for perhaps a more formal basis to provide input. And by the way, I have been working with 2 or 3 other flat fee advisors, and would welcome a couple more who want to be a part of that informal working group or whatever, if we can get there to provide NASA and its members perhaps a different view of what it means to be a flat fee advisor, and why they should be more receptive to it, instead of being you pick your adjective, skeptical, concerned, whatever more stronger ones you want to use. So anyway, that's what it looks like to me right now. Anything else?
Scott, just Dwight here. I'm in Colorado, and my understanding is, if you had 2 portfolios next to each other with $500,000 each, and you charge $5,000 to each of them, either because it's 1% or $5,000 flat fee, they would much rather prefer you do an AUM.
Yes,
and it's much easier to trace that. Rather than, and there's some, and I was talking to Knut about this, like I kind of went toe to toe a little bit with when I got registered a few years ago, and they have some issues. They don't want somebody charging $5,000 when you're not managing the money, because then you're maybe charging a percentage that's higher. So they have some like real issues with it, but the general consensus with other advisors that I've talked to as well is that they're basically forcing their hand to say, you have to be an AUM, and maybe the workaround is it's an AUM capped.
Well, I mean, me personally, I will suggest that they don't want to be in the position of pricing advisory planning fees. That's not what their business is. But as a substitute of that, what I suggest is that if there is a higher level of clarity and simplicity and transparency in terms of what it is you're doing and what they're getting, they should be that should satisfy them, if they are open-minded. But to be in the business of trying to price your services, I don't think they really want to go there. I suspect it may have to do with the fact that they just find what you guys are doing so different, they don't quite know how to relate to it, or to give them a little bit of benefit of the doubt. But thank you, Dwight.
Yeah, thanks, Dwight. Thanks, Knut.
Anybody else? If not, Sarah, it's back to you.
Right, okay. So seeing we only have 20 of us left here and we're an hour and a half into this meetup, there were questions that were sent in, and I'm not sure if we answered all of them. So if you sent in a question and you feel it wasn't answered by the group, please feel free to speak up now before we end the meetup. Here's the list of questions.
Sarah, I had a quick question to follow up for Knut.
Yeah.
I was getting ready to type this out, but it'd be too long. Who's really behind this from the regulators? I mean, it strikes me that, I always joke 1% of nothing is still nothing. So if they think that some of the folks that actually need advisory services, if they're trying to not get those services, this is a good way, because if you go strictly AUM, nobody can afford to address some of these smaller clients.
Right.
So there are some fixed fees associated with just setting up a client and dealing with it. I wonder if this isn't being driven by the other side of the spectrum, where it's really those that are the largest players are attempting to justify an AUM fee basis, and thus justify when they charge somebody 1% on $100 million or something like that.
Here,
do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, one starting premise. My experience has been that the state folks are far more not understanding, but sensitive to, and they actually appreciate the word fiduciary and what it means in a way that we're not seeing from the SEC. Now, this is not true in every state, but it is true, I think, in many states. So that's one of my starting premises. So maybe I start with giving them the benefit of a doubt a little bit. And so that is the one thought. So on many things, I believe that the other side is behind what we're seeing. There's no question about that in my mind. On this one, I'm not there yet. I am believing, and again, it was just one meeting. It was 45 minutes. It was I think a candid back and forth. I'm getting the sense that it's more a matter of just not being familiar with what it means to charge on a flat fee, that and it looks arbitrary. They go into your website and they see these list of services and they see this price, and how do you get there? How much money are you making? Blah 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 blah. And so at this moment, that's my takeaway. And and I hope I'll be, to be honest, I just hope I'm more or less correct, because again, as a rule, the states folks inherently appreciate much more what you guys are doing than what the other guys do. I mean, I just think it does come down to that. And so, I don't think there's the influence of the dark side on this. I haven't seen evidence of it yet.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, Knut, I have one more question for you. Well, it's not really a question. It's more of kind of an observation. So when you talk with the regulators, whether they're, I'm assuming mostly just state regulators, not SEC, when you're dealing with Colorado or others, maybe I'd be curious to know, like in the future, when you do this, if you, again, lay out two situations for them, you got two clients that are identical, same, asset-wise, same services being provided. Again, this advisor charges a percentage of AUM and is doing everything. And this advisor is charging you a fixed fee, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or whatever it is, name a price. How would they treat each of those advisors differently? And maybe that really gets back to, again, the issue is it really based on the investments we're talking about, or is it based on they just treat the fees differently?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't know what the answer to that is.
Right. Yeah. I'm not asking the question. You know, just as you bring it up with, talk to regulators and bring it up as an example.
But
is there a real issue, the AUM fee versus the hourly or again, fixed retainer, or is the issue that you're not managing money and you are managing money?
Right. And, an associated next obvious question is, what does the average state regulator think that financial planning is?
Right.
Seriously. And if they just look at Merrill Lynch, for example, they've got one view of it. I mean, or if they look at some folks on our own fee side who have a minimalist view of financial planning, that's a different thing. Heck, what's this all about? We go through a 3-month progress, we make a 10-page report, and there we are. It's on the shelf, and that's done and over with. So, I don't know what their perception of financial planning is, and I don't know that they have a clue. I don't know whether they have a clue that in many firms that the real work, the real value add, the real time, it's not allocating index funds, for God's sakes. A monkey can almost do that, but it's doing all the other stuff. And, but that's not in their training. That's not in their background. So that, if that is part of it, that makes sense to me. They just don't know. They don't know how to think about it.
Well, it is registered investment advisors.
Exactly. So listen, one sort of follow-up might be, well, that's an interesting thought, Canute. Maybe we should help our own state regulators understand what the hell these guys are doing. These guys, these financial planners.
Somebody do that.
Well, I mean, how somebody does it is the easiest way is to have NASA think this is a good idea, and that and that there's an opportunity through NASA to begin to provide some content to their state members, that maybe they haven't had before, they haven't seen before. So that's, again, I don't want to say anymore because because I haven't had the meeting. But that is clearly an objective. That is clearly an objective, to get them to come back and say, help us understand, what the hell these guys do for their flat fee. I mean, and I understand they don't want to ask directly because they're going to sound stupid, or they may think they sound stupid because they don't know. So, that's just my guess.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Canute. Thanks for all your efforts on this too, by the way.
Okay. Well, you're welcome. So anyway, hopefully there'll be more to report going forward. And if so, I will be reaching out to this group to provide some intellectual firepower for whatever we are able to do going forward. So there we go. Sarah?
I think we should end the webinar. Does anybody disagree with me?
I think the ayes have it.
Okay. The regulators need to be educated. Yeah. Okay. Okay, y'all. Thank you.
Okay.
December 14th. I'll see you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.